So today's video is actually filmed on Friday, but I only just now got it approved, so I'm posting it now. But since then, a few things have happened that I'll hopefully cover in tomorrow's video, so you have that to look forward to. Hey guys, so today's video is a continuation of the Trisha Paytas, Jeffree Star, Shane Dawson saga, and it seems to be coming to an end, but then whenever you think it's coming to an end, it's definitely not coming to an end. So it's, you know, people need to respond. Like, it's starting to get a little bit crazy. Like, at this point, people have to respond. So this can't be the end. But like, there's only so much Trisha can say, right? But then she does like to drag things out, like with James Charles. You know, she can't stop. David Dobrik, she's been talking about him for like 3 years now. Like, that woman does not stop. So like, until they both respond, Jeffree and Shane, this is going to come to an end. And Ryland's response just is not cutting it for me or her or anyone else. Here's my Instagram. Here's my puppy's Instagram. Here's my TikTok, which I've been loving very much. Like, it's incredible platform, love it. Yeah, subscribe. YouTube isn't unsubscribing people, so if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, scroll down, and if you were subscribed, make sure you still are subscribed. Hit that bell, make sure it's on all rather than personalized, and yeah. So I'm just popping in to say that today's video is very kindly sponsored by Function of Beauty. I've worked with them before and I've loved their products, and now I'm being sponsored by them again, and it's just amazing, so I want to share that with you guys. So before we get started, you can click on the link in the description to get 20% off your first order, but now I'll tell you all about my Function of Beauty experience. My hair is straight, it's like medium thickness, it's not too dry, not too oily. So when you do the hair quiz, they'll ask you what your goals are for your hair. So considering the fact that I am a bleach and tone kind of a girl, I am always kind of down to nourish and condition my hair. So I did a deep condition, replenish hair, strengthen, volumize, and shine. I did volume because my hair is super like long and heavy, so it does weigh it down a little bit. And also I did ask for curtain bangs, as you can see. To get that swoop, I wanted like a little bit more volume in my hair. I picked vanilla and shea butter for my fragrance, and I made it super strong because I love when the scent stays in my hair. I've tried the pineapple scent that they've had. I tried the shea butter and vanilla one. I tried the apple and pear. All of their scents so far have been incredible. It just depends kind of what you're going for. I picked the pink and lavender bottles because I think they're so cute, and as you guys know, I really like pink and purple and like pastel-y shades. So Function of Beauty never uses parabens, sulfates, GMOs, or any toxins. It's 100% vegan and cruelty-free. So if you're a vegan and you only use cruelty-free products, then you can 100% trust Function of Beauty. It's suitable for my hair purely because obviously I make the formulation. It's exactly kind of like how I want it to be. So it can be exactly what you need it to be just based on the choices that you make. So I've been using these products for over a year. Like, I remember I tried them, I think July of 2019. I've been loving them since. Honestly, they're great products that work really well. I feel like they always make my hair feel so silky smooth. Even when it's still wet, I can like feel it getting soft and smooth. Super easy to brush out my hair as well, considering how long it is. And it's not the thickest hair, like each strand isn't super thick. It does get tangled up pretty easily, and I feel like I never struggle to brush my hair out after I get out the shower, which is incredible for me because I don't want to pull any hair out. But they have come out with something new as well, which is their serum. The serum is actually got heat protection, so I always add it after I shower. I add it into my ends and kind of like go through my whole head with it, and then I can go in and blow dry with the round brush, and I feel like I'm not damaging my hair, and it just feels amazing. So because I've been using these products for quite a while now and I really trust the way they work, I highly would recommend it to you guys. So if you want to get 20% off your first order, go click the link in description. And yeah, I hope you guys really enjoy the products because I love them. And now let's get back into the tea. Oscar Wilde, who is someone who I thought was like friends with Jeffree Star, I think they were pretty close for a while, he tweeted out saying, "Yeah, I've been too kind and kept my mouth shut for too long. But the only thing I'll say publicly right now is that yes, I physically was asked by Jeffree at what point do I cut ties with Shane." Like, this is more than 3 strikes, literally the day after Tati filmed her video. And if you guys don't know what we're talking about here, when Tati filmed her Breaking My Silence video, obviously Shane was heavily called out in that video. Like, yeah, we knew Jeffree was evil, but everyone had this image of Shane being this like pure father of YouTube who everyone can go to when they're being problematic, and he'll just help them because he's so unproblematic. It just seemed like he was uncancelable. This isn't new information, right? Like, a lot of the stuff that came out about him isn't new information. His blackface is not new information. This is stuff that we've seen on his channel before, and whenever someone tried to call him out, people were just like, why are you doing this? Shane Dawson has apologized. He's unproblematic. So I feel like a lot of this isn't new information. It's just like extra stuff started piling on, and then he started associating with the wrong people. And you know, when like things start adding up, yeah, the pot finally has to boil over. Like, things suddenly have to come to an end, right? And I think it was just too much. Like, I genuinely thought blackface was too much, but it wasn't. We had to have all the extra stuff, all the extra decoration, and all the extra decoration was bad. I feel like it boiled over, but he was for a while uncancelable. And you know, when you're Jeffree Star and you're this problematic person who essentially was just like throwing slurs around publicly at people, saying things like you want to bleach their skin, and despicable stuff coming out of Jeffree Star's mouth for the longest time, and then also criminal activity. Like, there is allegations of his misconduct. Like, on Business Insider. Well, not Business Insider, they have like an insider thing, then they have like Business Insider, and then they have like Insider for like drama and tea. They're basically like a drama channel, but just in like article format. I love the girls that like run those pages, like they're great. I think they do like a great job of consolidating all the information to one, and they usually talk about things that we can't talk about without being demonetized. So if you want to know more about Jeffree Star's misconduct, then please go read those Insider articles. They're interesting. So when you have someone like Jeffree Star go to someone like Shane Dawson, who Jeffree thought Shane was uncancelable, like he thought that is the person that is going to give him my redemption arc, and he did, right? When they did that first series, Shane Dawson gave him the redemption arc. It was the beautiful world of Jeffree Star. Suddenly everyone's a Jeffree Star fan because Shane Dawson was uncancelable, and he had a precedent of fixing people, fixing very problematic people and giving them a good image. Like the only person I'd say he failed with was Jake Paul. But that's because Jake Paul didn't even try to take that on board and be like, oh, I'm gonna use this to my advantage and become a good person. Like Tana Mojo was like, I'm so sorry, I'm crying, and everyone's like, oh, okay, cool, she's sorry. She got her redemption arc. Jeffree, went on there and was like, I've had a bad childhood. And everyone's like, oh my god, he's a good person. Jake Paul didn't do that. He doesn't feel bad, and he doesn't even want to pretend that he feels bad. And that seems to be working for him right now. He's like the bad guy of the internet. I don't know how people find him entertaining. Please let me know. I would love to know how people find Jake Paul entertaining, because I find him infuriating. Like so cringy that it like makes my teeth hurt. That's the backstory. So when you think about the fact that Jeffree Star went to Shane Dawson because he was uncancelable, unproblematic, and could give people redemption arcs, the moment Shane Dawson started being cancelled with the Breaking My Silence video and all the other allegations, and then the Smith family coming for him, he stopped being uncancelable, he stopped being unproblematic, and he stopped being able to give other people redemption arcs, because now he needs someone to give him the redemption arc. So Jeffree Star, right, everything that he wanted from Shane Dawson was gone. Do you really think Jeffree Star wanted to be friends with Shane Dawson? Do those two people match in any way, shape or form, personality-wise, looks-wise, lifestyle-wise? Do they look like the same kind of category of people? Like, yeah, they're both problematic, but I think they're two different types of problematic. Jeffree uses his fame, power, and money to get what he wants. Shane is just problematic because he thought it was like funny to be edgy, or I don't know, like I don't know what the reasoning is behind him being the way he is, but they're two different types of problematic. I just never imagined them being friends, and the only reason Jeffree wanted to be friends with Shane is because of those three categories, that three criteria points that then disappeared the moment Tati filmed her Breaking My Silence video. Why would he then want to continue being friends with Shane? So this makes sense. It makes sense as to why Jeffree said, like, this is, when do I drop him? He's not uncancelable, he's not unproblematic, he's not going to give me my redemption arc. I need him gone. Jeffree is not friends with you unless you're good for business. Shane being cancelable, problematic, and not the giver-outer of redemption arcs is not good for business. So Jeffree's going to drop him. Okay, I know this is going to be my point later on because I have it in my notes. How many friends has Jeffree had that were good for business, and then when they were not good for business, he dropped them, right? So there's KVD, like Kat Von D, right? So he was friends with Kat Von D. She started being a bit problematic, so he was like, oh. And she was problematic, but like, was she any more problematic than he is? No, it's like pot calling the pet. Why did that just not come out of my mouth right? Is it pot calling the kettle black? Pot calling the kettle something? Right, pot calling the kettle. They're both, he's pot, she's kettle, like, they're both equally problematic. I'd say sometimes Jeffree Star bordering on more problematic because he's actually doing allegations of criminal stuff. I mean, the moment you hit criminal, I'm like, yeah, this isn't internet drama anymore. I don't want to talk about it. Then we had Laura Lee, Manny MUA, Gabriel Zamora, Patrick Star, like the OG YouTubers. I feel like if we talk about the first wave, it was Laura Lee, Manny MUA, Gabriel Zamora, Patrick Star, like those kind of people that he kind of like dabbled in. Right, like Laura Lee, Manny MUA mainly. They stopped being friends because allegations started coming out about like, stuff like Thomas Halbert started coming in, messing things up, stirring the pot. And he dropped them. And not only did he drop them, he also ruined their career, right? Like, what was it? Like Laura and Manny lost about 500,000 subs within like a week. Like that was unimaginable. Like it was unimaginable for something like that to happen to someone. Then we had James Charles, Tati. That was like the second wave of his friendships for OG YouTubers, right? So it was like Laura, Manny, Patrick, Gabriel, yada yada yada, like they were the first wave. And then we had like James Charles, Tati, they were like the second wave, like super big, super reputable. He tried to ruin James Charles, and then he tried to ruin Tati. He tried to ruin Tati by ruining James Charles. or James Charles by ruining Tati. I mean, either way, they were like pawns in his game. Now we have Shane Dawson. So if you look at the trend of friendships in his life, is his friendship with Shane Dawson any more or less real than all the other ones? No, they were all good for business at the time. And then when they were not good for business anymore, they were not good for friends anymore. Shane Dawson was good for business, and now he is not good for business, and Jeffree Star wants to drop him. I feel like I just need to make it clear, Jeffree Star does not make friends. He makes business partners. And just like in a business, if you're not bringing in the business anymore, you're being dropped. Do you guys think Shane Dawson realizes, like, does he know that? Or does he still think Jeffree is like his actual friend? Like, they're actually friends. Oh wait, Nikita Dragun as well. Nikita Dragun and OG YouTubers, they stopped being friends. Oscar Wilde then follows that up with, I'm not trying to bring people into this, but I truly feel my kindness or empathy was taken advantage of, and I just feel bad for the fact that Trisha lost a friend for siding with someone I physically watched say what they said. Simple as that. Trisha replies to that saying, thank you for speaking up and saying something. My credibility is always questioned these days, and as someone who was there, not on the payroll, I appreciate your voice on this. It's beyond mean girl drama. It's traumatizing that I still haven't gotten over. Now, he then follows that up with a video that he films, which was very uncomfortable to watch because it was 7 minutes, right? But it was, I watch all my YouTube videos on my TV. So I'll put it on my TV, I'll have my iPad, and I'll just be laying in bed, right? Taking my notes, having fun. But like, he didn't film himself. He did kind of like a podcast thing, like a 7-minute podcast, which would have been fine if he just put any cover on it, like a writing that says Oscar Wilde, and I would have been completely fine with it. But it was like him naked, torso up. And I was like, if someone walks into my room, they're like, why are you just staring at a big picture of a man without his t-shirt on? Why are you doing this? Like, I was just like waiting, like hearing if someone's walking up the stairs, because I was like, how do I explain this? Mom, I'm doing work. People are actually accusing him of clout chasing. Like, people are accusing him of basically using this to distance himself from Jeffree because it's just not good to be friends with Jeffree right now. It's kind of what Jeffree's doing to Shane, right? So like, people are saying that Oscar Wilde didn't mind being friends with Jeffree a few months ago. Like, they were in the studio together, like doing whatever. And now that Jeffree's being called out for being a bad friend, and now that like it's really boiled over, like now he's saying, oh, I knew all along you were a bad person. So like, if you knew all along that someone is a bad person, why did you hang out with them? Because he was caught hanging out with Jeffree in between the Vegas trip and now, right? Like, I'm pretty sure there was like a blip where he was hanging out with Jeffree in between that time. So if you saw him behaving like that and you didn't agree with it, why did you continue to hang out with him? But I guess people are saying, you know, Jeffree is manipulative. He makes people feel like if they speak out or if they move away or if they try to distance themselves, he'll ruin them. So maybe it is like a typical toxic relationship where you just can't exit calmly unless it's other people publicly exiting, and then that's your way out. You're like, I'm gonna grab this and go. So maybe that's that. Like, you know, I don't know someone's intentions behind the scenes. I can't speak for his intentions, but I'm glad that he's bringing awareness to what's happening, and he's bringing in a perspective that we wouldn't have without him. So I appreciate it regardless. After the Breaking My Silence video, obviously Shane did that live stream. Apparently at that point they were like watching all of that go down, like Jeffree and Oscar, because they were in, I believe he said like in his kitchen or something, and he goes, how do I cut him off? I mean, I was surprised it took this long to come out. When I was watching that live stream, I was uncomfortable. I was like, is Jeffree okay with this? He talks about how, you know, he was basically just like, yeah, this isn't good for business. He's on like strike 3. I just don't want to associate with him. And then regarding Trisha Paytas, he tried to get people to dislike Trisha Paytas. So he would just say things about her to people that would make them not want to hang out with her without ever meeting her or having an experience with her. Oddly similar to something I'm going to get into in a minute, and then I'm going to get into something else that I go into in a minute. I think it was like nighttime. I sent in like a voice note to a group chat that I'm in, and I was just like, guys, I have a conspiracy theory. I have a conspiracy theory about Tati Westbrook and Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson. Hear me out. So I'm going to tell you guys the conspiracy theory here. Also, like, Jeffree didn't support Oscar Wilde during like his hardships whenever he was going through like rough stuff in his life. Jeffree wasn't there for him, but then he would just like pop up a month later like, oh, hi. But like, he didn't want to help him. So he was just like, yeah, you're my friend. I want to tell you tea and I want to turn you against people. But like, if you're actually going through hardship, don't get me involved. I don't want to help, which is great. It's just the kind of friends you want. Trisha Paytas then films a lot of TikToks. I'm not going to play them all for you, but she basically, whenever Shane, Ryland or someone, like something comes out publicly, she'll film a TikTok with her like initial reaction. Instead of doing like a full video, she'll do like a few TikToks just basically like debunking everything that they're saying. So she did that with a podcast that Ryland came out with, which I'm going to go over in a minute. She films a lot of TikToks about Shane Dawson, basically just being like, everything is starting to really make sense and click together, like the stuff he told me and then stuff other people told me, and then things just making sense now. And she seems to be coming to like the same conclusions we are. She's like, oh my god, so this and this and this, and then you said this but you actually meant this. And it's like, you know, when things start clicking into place, Like, that seems to be happening to Trisha right now. She's like, why did no one tell me? It's just really sad to see, because like, she's like seeing her own friendships fall apart publicly as we do at the same time. Like, we're all seeing this happen at the same time. There's a podcast that Ryland has with Lizzie. It's called The Sip. Now, there's been a lot of, not misinformation, but just a lot of like stuff going around because everyone's like panicking and they're trying to figure out what's going on. There was an episode of The Sip, which was episode 1, where Ryland and Lizzie talk about their friendship and how it ended for a few years. So they weren't friends for a few years because Lizzie continued to be friends with someone who Ryland didn't like. And he cut her off for it. So they talk about that in episode 1. Now, that episode isn't on YouTube. Now, people thought, including Trisha and a few people I think reported on this, that they deleted this podcast while all of this was coming out. That doesn't really make sense because they also mentioned this story in, I think, episode 2 or 3. Like, they mentioned this again. So if they were trying to hide it, they would delete both episodes. But also, I don't think this episode was ever on YouTube because if you go on their Social Blade, there's no negative views. Usually if you delete a video and you go on some, like, let's say I deleted a video and you went on my Social Blade, in views, you would see on that day negative views because I technically took those views away from my channel. So like publicly, there's less views. And then you would see like, I don't know if that video had like 400,000 views and they gained 100,000 views on that day, it would go into negative 300,000 because it would be, they deleted 400,000 but they still gained 100,000 from other videos on this day, and therefore the net would be like 300,000 views missing, right? You wouldn't notice the difference if, for example, they deleted 400,000 views but on that whole day as a whole they gained 600,000 views, and therefore it would be a net positive of 200,000 views. But they don't gain that many views to make up for that, so we would have seen them delete the video unless Social Blade is behind and it's lagging behind. Sometimes it does lag behind and it will pop up within the next few days, but then I'll let you guys know. But I just don't think they deleted it because there's no proof for them deleting it except for it just not being on their channel. But it is on Spotify, so if they really wanted to get rid of their tracks, like really cover their tracks and delete everything, they would have also deleted it off Spotify. Maybe they just never uploaded it on YouTube. Maybe that was before they intended on making this a YouTube thing as well. I don't know. I don't know why it's only on Spotify, but it is. And they do mention the story in further videos. So I don't think they deleted it on purpose to like hide this, but it is a big convenient coincidence that like it disappeared right as like the same story's coming out. Anyway, but regardless, right? Ryland dropped his best friend because she picked being friends with someone else over him, someone who wronged him. And then she was also wronged, and then they kind of rejoiced, and now they have the Sip. Ryland, you should be the one to understand how this feels because you went through it. You lost a friend because they picked someone who wronged you. Interesting. Anyway, they post a new episode of The Sip called Dealing with Addiction, and for the first few minutes they talk about the Trisha situation. They're like, oh, we wish we didn't have to do this publicly, but like when she came to you privately you also didn't do anything about it, so maybe publicly is the only way we can make this happen. He basically just acts like he didn't know. He acts like she never came to him with this privately, which, sure, if that's the case, then it's understandable that nothing happened until now. But now you know, so what are you going to do about it? Like, the excuse, I didn't know, only lasts until you know. And now you know, so what are you going to do about it? Are you going to cut off Jeffree? Are you going to publicly show support to Trisha? Like, what's the next step? Because I haven't seen it. Trisha said this and other people obviously talked about it. Shane edits their podcasts and he's in the room when they're filming the podcast. But even if he's not, he's editing the podcast, so he sees everything that's being put on there. And if he didn't agree with what Ryland said or wanted to add to it, he would have said, Ryland, can we cut this out and then like refilm it? And then you guys can like mention it differently in the next episode. But he didn't. So Shane's technically co-signed this. Whatever Ryland said, Shane was like, yep, I agree with it. Or he would have edited it out because he edits out the podcast and they're together. So like he would have had that conversation with Ryland if he didn't agree with what Ryland said. So technically what Ryland said is also what Shane said. Indirectly. Like, is Shane going to speak about this? I don't know. They didn't actually apologize. Like, Ryland at no point was like, I'm actually really sorry about this. I suppose, like, in my opinion, right, what should have happened was he heard all of this. And if he genuinely didn't know, like, he didn't know this was happening, like, he wasn't in the loop. He says that he doesn't like Hair by Jay, that what he said was despicable and that, like, he's only ever met him in passing, but, like, still no support for Trisha, really. What I expected him to say was kind of like, I was never aware that that's how you felt. I'm so sorry that anyone has ever made you feel that way, and I'm sorry that we made you feel like we didn't support you in everything that was going on, and like we, you know, slipped up with that. But just so you know, you have our public support 1000%. Like, wouldn't that have made her feel a little bit more secure in the friendship? But instead he's like, I don't know who Hair by Jay is. I don't agree with him, but like also you didn't tell us and I'm not a mind reader. It sounded so passive aggressive. He was like, why are you dragging me into this? And then Lizzie seemed more supportive than Ryland. Lizzie was like, look, we love you, Trisha. No one meant for this to happen. We're like, we love you, whatever. Like, Ryland couldn't even do that. Like, why is Lizzie more supportive of Trisha than you? Lizzie, who barely knows Trisha. And it's just, I'm pissed off because Ryland went through the same thing. And he spoke about how he cut off a friend for like 3 years because they didn't support him when he was going through a toxic friendship with someone. I don't know. It just baffles me, the irony in all of that. It's like, you find out who your real friends are through hardship. Realistically, that's the one time where you're putting them to a test. If they pass, great. If they fail, great. At least you know now. At least Trisha knows now, right? Like, she found out through hardship who her real friends are. And I think that's Ela and Ethan and Moses, her fiance. Like, they're the real people there for her. Shane, definitely not. Ryland, definitely not. Jeffree, no. So then they turned off the comments under that podcast and the like to dislike ratio. People are mad because they're like, we want to express an opinion and you're not letting us express an opinion. So they went to the previous podcast to express an opinion. And that coincidentally is the Jeffree Star, Kanye West podcast. So they start leaving hate comments there. And then they're forced to turn off comments on that podcast as well. So are you just going to go all the way back? Like, as long as this drama's going on, you're just going to keep on like turning off comments. People are going to go to the previous podcast. You're going to turn off the comments. They're going to go to the previous podcast. Like, you might as well just leave the comments on and let people comment under that video. They turn off the likes to dislike ratio. I'm like, as of right now, I think 2 podcast episodes have the comments turned off, but all the other ones are now just being flooded with hate comments because of those 2 being turned off. Do you see what I mean? It's like, it's just further spreading it. In his video said that Shane Dawson said to him that Trisha Paytas is a pathological liar because Peter Mon was hanging out with Shane Dawson and Trisha was like, oh my god, I wish I was there. And then Peter said that to Shane and Shane was like, oh, well, she's a pathological liar. So then he does talk about her behind her back. That's very interesting, including the Gabby Hanna stuff, right? Like, let's go back. I think I already mentioned this, but I'm not sure, so I'm going to just repeat it again. During the Gabby Hanna debacle with Trisha Paytas, you guys remember that? Gabby Hanna told Trisha's ex that she had herpes, and that came back to her, and then that kind of did rounds publicly. Apparently, Shane Dawson told Gabby Hanna. Gabby Hanna told Trisha that Shane Dawson told her. All this time we didn't know who it was. Shane Dawson was the one that did that. Instead of going to his best friend Trisha Paytas and saying, hey, I had this weird thing, like, is it true? Should we sort it out? Do you want me to go with you to the doctors? He decided to go to Gabby Hanna, someone who didn't even like Trisha. Well, someone who Trisha didn't like. So I think Gabby Hanna said she liked Trisha, but Trisha said she never liked Gabby. So like, either way, why not just go to your friend? And Peter said that Shane does talk about people behind their backs a lot. Like, it's a thing he does. And we knew this because people have mentioned how during the James situation, I think it was Tab. Remember when Tab filmed the video on Jeffree? During the scandal, Shane was on the phone to Jeffree and was like going off on James Charles, calling him all sorts of things. And that's when like the facade started to crack for the first time. So it was like Shane never seemed like that kind of a person. And then there's someone saying like, yeah, he was going off on James a lot. And people were like, well, why would he go off on James and then not be involved in the scandal behind the scenes? Of course he was involved because he seemed really angry. I don't know. It just like, every time someone speaks, we can see the true Shane Dawson, you know? Then Trisha films a video called Shane Dawson and Ryland Are Literal Scum of the Earth. I think that's got a great ring to it. She said they're not sorry. She says that she always gets pushed aside. So for example, when he first met, you know, Garrett, Morgan, Jeffree Star, Andrew, he would film videos with them, like the haunted stuff. Then he'd do stuff with Jeffree and then she was pushed to the side. And whenever he finds new friends, she just gets pushed to the side. Named the shade after her. But then when she had a live show, he didn't go to it. It was like a month before the palette launch. So he didn't go to her show to support her personally, like be there. And then he puts her name into a palette, just being like, oh, shut up. Say your name in the palette. Shush. So she also mentions that he would say a lot of things to her about other people to rile her up, right? So he saw that she had like a thing with David Dobrik and he called David Dobrik a sociopath to her. He was like, yeah, he's definitely a sociopath. And like just riling her up. And then what I found really interesting, and I said at the start of the video I was going to come back to this, and this is just all kind of like taking shape now. He said really going off on James Charles to her. Like saying a lot of things, like how he's an awful person, the stuff that James is doing behind the scenes, to rile her up. And then, you know, she said she was the person going off on James publicly while Shane stayed silent and had clean hands. Like, are we not seeing a pattern? Are we not seeing a trend? This is what I sent in the group chat, by the way. I was like so fascinated by this, right? So you're telling me that Shane goes to people like Trisha Paytas and starts talking badly about people and she publicly roasts them while he keeps his hands clean. So she's doing the dirty work for him. Does that then mean that he did the same thing to Tati Westbrook? He went to Tati, started talking about James, and I mean, that's oddly similar to what she said in her Breaking My Silence video. He went to her, started talking, you know, oh, me and you are the same. I'm an empath. I feel it. But by the way, James Charles, yeah, some tea behind the scenes. I think you should make a video on it. I'll help you out with it. So his hands are clean. It just all makes sense. I'm sorry, it makes sense. This is the second person he's done this to that has admitted it publicly. He goes to people as an empath, as someone who loves them. I'm your friend. I'm an empath. I want what's best for you. He goes to them and says all this disgusting stuff about YouTubers and waits for them to speak out. And his hands are clean. I find it so fascinating. I want to see the psychology behind these people. I want to know what's going on. I want someone to like analyze this. I want there to be a study done on this. The psychology behind Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star. How they function as people, like what they think when they do these things. It's so calculated. It's so calculated. It's not even an accident. He doesn't do this by accident. It's so calculated. He knows what he's doing. He goes to the people that he knows are either super sensitive, like Tati, or super like easy to rile up, like Trisha, and feeds them information until they both crack and speak publicly so he doesn't have to do it himself. And then he can ruin people's careers through other people. He uses them as like megaphones where they just like amplify his opinions. I find it fascinating that this is happening. You can tell I'm fascinated by this. She criticizes Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star's past a little bit more. So she says how she finally watched the D'Angelo Wallace video on Shane Dawson, and she says she wasn't actually aware of a lot of the stuff coming out by Shane Dawson. She just like didn't want to look into it. And now that she has, she's like, I'm kind of disgusted. Like I didn't know any of this. I knew some stuff. I thought it was just like bad jokes. And then she's like, now I'm disgusted. So then we had a James Charles tweet where he basically insinuated that like, it feels good when people finally realise someone is a bad person when you knew it all along. And it's either about Jeffree Star or Shane Dawson. It could be about both of them. Could be about just Jeffree Star. I think it could be a combination of both, really, because they both wronged him. Then he started liking shady tweets about stuff and replying to stuff. I think he's enjoying himself now, and understandably so. I think he's enjoying himself. Tati's probably enjoying herself from the sidelines, even though she's being really silent. I think they're both enjoying themselves just watching this all go down. Because people are finally realising like the stuff that they've been saying all along, right? Like Tati said this. She was like, they feed people information, they manipulate people, make them trust them, and then use them for their own gain. It's something that Tati said almost a year ago now. Well, no, like half a year ago. Like there seems to be a pattern. Then Gabriel Zamora tweets about this situation, which, you know, he was involved with the first Dramageddon with Jeffree Star. He had a feud with him, and now obviously it's continuing. Where do we go from here, right? Like where do we go from here? Who's going to respond first? I'm saying like out of Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star, probably Jeffree first, but like he also doesn't care enough about people's feelings to then acknowledge them. Like is he really going to make a video going, I'm so sorry, Trisha? Like no, he's not going to do that. He doesn't care enough, right? So like Shane? But then he still hasn't had his redemption arc. He still hasn't filmed a documentary on himself going, whoop, me, bad childhood. So like if he hasn't filmed his docuseries yet, or he filmed it but he hasn't released it yet, he hasn't had his redemption arc. Is he going to come back to the internet with this? He could just film like an Instagram story, do like the typing thing that he always does on Instagram. But is that going to be enough? No. It's like, is he going to speak out? Is Jeffree going to speak out? Now, other people involved. Is James Charles going to speak out any more than this? Or is he just going to keep out a tweet? Is Tati going to speak out? Is Gabby Hanna going to speak out? Now, will Shane Dawson drop Jeffree Star first, or will Jeffree Star drop Shane first? Or will they not drop each other and just keep on going with this? A lot of people are saying there's like this theory that Shane Dawson could drop Jeffree Star, fully support Trisha Paytas, and use this thing, dropping Jeffree Star, as a redemption arc instead of his docuseries, because he could also say that he was manipulated by Jeffree Star, right? They could all do a trio, like Tati, Trisha, Shane. He could really link onto that and be like, I was also manipulated. I was also in a toxic friendship. This is my redemption arc. Imagine the scenes. I'd faint. I'd be like, what is happening? If Shane Dawson right now filmed a video going, I was also manipulated by Jeffree Star, and I'm in full support of Trisha Paytas and Tati Westbrook, I would faint. I would die and come back to life, and then die again and come back to life. I think this could get really messy, realistically. But he could use this as a redemption arc, and I'm surprised he hasn't yet. Because with how calculated he is, with how he drops and picks friends up for his own benefit, I'm surprised he hasn't done this yet. How much in like royalties is he still making from the conspiracy palette? And if he signed good contracts, even if him and Jeffree fall out, he could still be owed the royalties. Like, just because you're not friends anymore doesn't mean the contract doesn't exist, right? So like if he signed a good contract, even if they fall out publicly, Jeffree could either just choose to stop selling the palette, or he would have to still pay Shane the commission. Not being friends anymore doesn't like ruin a contract. He could secure the bag and have a redemption arc. hire me as a PR team. Now, what is the difference between Trisha Paytas and Tati Westbrook is the note I want to leave this on. I do understand that Tati Westbrook tried to ruin a 19-year-old's life, and that is probably the difference. But if we ignore the James Charles situation for a minute, and it's very difficult because it's like the elephant in the room, like that did happen. If we just ignore that for a minute, if we just look at the two situations, right? Tati Westbrook comes out with a video saying, I was manipulated. I didn't really know what was happening. I thought I knew what was happening because that's the information that I was fed, and everyone hates her for it. Like everyone's like, you're a grown woman, you're almost 40. How were you manipulated as a grown woman? Now, Trisha Paytas is roughly the same age as Tati, right? So like the age difference there isn't a big issue. And Trisha comes out with a video saying, I was manipulated to talk badly about James Charles and David Dobrik and many other people. I was manipulated into thinking that things were one way when they were really another way, and everyone's supporting Trisha Paytas. What is the difference other than the James Charles attack? Which, I mean, Trisha has been attacking James Charles as well, just not probably as hard as Tati. Like, that was a big video. What is the difference there? Why is the reaction so different? Is it because the Tati video hit on criminal activity? Like, I don't think... Well, Trisha did try to accuse James of grooming Charlie, so that's criminal activity, but maybe it's because none of Trisha's videos or TikToks ever got as big as Bye Sister. Like, Bye Sister was on, what, 60 million views before she deleted it? I don't think any of Trisha's videos even come close to that. So maybe it's just the scale at which Tati almost cancelled James. Like, nothing that Trisha's ever done has cancelled James, but Tati easily, like, just made 3 million subs disappear. So maybe the difference is just, like, how they went about doing it and how successful Tati was in almost cancelling James. But if we just ignore the James bit, they've both come out with the same allegations against the same people, and yet the reaction is very different to them. And I think if we just join those two together, I mean, it shows a pattern of behaviour for both Jeffree and Shane and how they treat friends. I think this could be used in conjunction to prove that both Shane and Jeffree are awful people, mainly to their friends behind the scenes, not just publicly. So instead of using them as like separate entities, I think we could bring Trisha's and Tati's allegations together for a strong case against Tati, against Jeffree and Shane, as friends and as public figures. That's the note I want to end on. If you guys enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, comment down below anything you want to comment down below, and subscribe to post videos every time something happens. So hit that bell, you'll be notified when that's happening. Social media links, any other links in the description. I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys.